what's up, everybody? Welcome. It's House Divided on Orange Bloods Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum. I'm in the Liverpool Champions t-shirt today. That's Chad Hastings. He's in just a red non-championship shirt that I'm aware of. Does that say Nike? What does that say?
Well, this is a Mike Evans camp
he's
shirt.
got a ring. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. I take it back.
He has been a Super Bowl champion and a, 4 years in a row division champ. So, yeah, Mike's got some championships.
You did not say division champ. Good.
Well, God. But
he's got a ring. He doesn't have to say that.
You said the big one. He did win a Super Bowl with some guy named Tom Brady. That did happen.
Anyway, comment, subscribe to the page if you think Chad mentioning his streak of division championships was kind of, I don't know what that was. Jump into this next chat. I promise we won't beat that topic to death, although I kind of want to just spend an hour talking about why he would have dared. Like, if I'd said that about the Cowboys, he would have shamed me. So, but nevertheless, we're going to move on. We've got something else we're going to nitpick and beat to death, Chad.
This just in, the Bucs aren't the Cowboys. But yes. Go
no,
ahead.
They've won a Super Bowl recently. You're right, Chad.
And you said it. Why would I say it again? Then I would sound stupid. He's a Super Bowl champ.
This show brought to you by the guys at Texas Card House. I got done dirty today at the card table. I was at Hijack.
Uh-oh.
I'm on my desktop. You can play it on your phone, but I like to play it on my screen sometimes right here when I'm doing the show. And my ace queen pre-flop, Chad, all in, got called by ace 5. And then the 5 came out on the river like a dirty little whore. Oh. And that was it. It was one of those, like, remember how the day before I was like, sometimes you just lose to the guy with better cards. Sometimes you don't. And that was one of those days, but we love Hijack. I love playing every single day. Real people, real money, as easy as just like upload, deposit some money and go play some cash games or tournament games or whatever your jam is. Chad, we both were on some days when we do this show, we're just like not that we're not on the same page, but we'll go into any conversations about the show early on and our heads can be in completely different places. Not today. Today, you opened up like right into dialogue where my brain was, and I was like, "Oh, Chad, I'm with you. I'm with you. I've got in my head, Chris Del Conte is the chicken man from Breaking Bad," and then we just kind of went from there. You and I both noticed the conversation and the comments made by Chris Del Conte yesterday about Texas and its NIL number in 2025 and the oddity of what exactly he is that he's opposed to. It was all very curious.
Yeah, sometimes an argument makes total sense, and then sometimes you're wondering why someone's arguing. And in that case, that's kind of what CDC to me was doing. And yeah, as I'm reading through Anwar's notes and so many reasons to sign up for orangebloods.com, but hit that QR code down there. That's the easiest way to get signed up for orangebloods.com. You're going to get all the content you ever dreamed of as a Longhorn fan, including this kind of stuff. Back and forth with the media, literally seeing every word that was spoken in Destin, Florida. And yeah, Catch, this was, the scene that Anwar sets is pretty wild when the characters in play are Heather Dinich from ESPN, Pat Forty makes an appearance, Chris Del Conte, and starring as Columbo, Kirk Bowles. I couldn't ask for anything better.
Well, and look, the backdrop to this for everybody who's watching this video that just wouldn't know or doesn't know, or you're just jumping in because you saw Gus Fring on the cover of the thumbnail. About a month ago, Kirk Bowles reported that the combined roster spend this year for Texas football was going to range between 35 and 40 million. As soon as that happened, we did a show where I said, look, Kirk's in pretty tight with Chris Del Conte. Like, they talk. And I said on the show, there's no way Kirk Bowles ran that report without running it by Chris Del Conte. I think they talk that much. And Chris Del Conte likes newspaper guys. Like, he likes them. And I think there's evidence of that. And when I see Kirk Bowles report stuff on the Texas athletic department on the AD level, like, I pay attention. And So that's the backdrop. He reported that. And as far as I know, Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time Chris Del Conte was specifically asked in a setting like this about that specific report, which I followed up with, I think, later that day or the next day, reaching out to one of my sources who I absolutely trust. And I said, hey, man, that number that Bowles threw out, is that a good number? And then that person indicated to me that he thought that the number was 36 and some change, and that that's not final, and that it might be a little, like, don't think 36,000,000. It's fluid, but that's ballpark where it's at. I reported that. Since I reported that, I've not had a single person from the athletic department call that out.
Nobody from the department. Nobody called you Columbo or
Anwar or Jason or anybody.
Nobody. Okay.
And we did shows on this.
Yeah.
Like we were as transparent as I could be. And what I would say is when we make mistakes, man, the athletic department typically seizes on them. An example I will give you was during the entire Eyes of Texas controversy.
Okay.
We had reported about a meeting that took place between Del Conte and, if I'm forgetting the details, forgive me. It's been 5 years. But there was a detail about, I want to say, someone's wife being in the meeting. And it turns out she wasn't in the meeting. And very quickly, other reporters with access to the athletic department made a point to say, this piece of reporting is wrong. That person wasn't in the meeting. Or that, it's so uber focused on the element that we got wrong that it was able to ignore all of the other reporting about what was said to have taken place. And it was just like, that person wasn't there. So there's some nuance to it, right? Our reporting as it stood did have a detail wrong. It was interesting to watch media that covers the program get fed. That's wrong. I'm confirming as a high-level ranking official at the university that's wrong. Get that out there. Like, you pay attention to who has that access. So I just have always believed. Now, Del Conte may not have given him a thumbs up. There's a lot of things that could have happened behind the scenes. But I have always believed that Kirk Bowles ran that by Chris Del Conte. And I don't know what happened in that exchange. But I do not believe that Kirk would report that if Del Conte was like, yo, man, that's the end of us if you do that. Like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think that's usually the kind of thing that a source gives you as a bone. Hey, you'll do my bidding and you'll help me here and there. If I need to control the message, you will help me control the message. I've had NIL people say, look, we need more people out there. Can you make a post? Can you pin a post? Getting the message out and then they'll turn around and give me an NIL tidbit. Like, that's how relationships work. If you're married and you've stayed married, you know what I'm talking about. If you've been married and been divorced, maybe you could never be a reporter or a really successful one, because I'm telling you, there's some give and take in these things. So I've always believed, look, something's going on with the Del Conte Bowles thing that I can't quite figure out, right? But I don't think Del Conte held his feet to the fire and said, don't you dare. And he certainly didn't tell Bowles, because if he goes to Bowles and says, dude, do not report that. That is wrong. I don't think Bowles reports it. Like, I think those guys have a good enough relationship where Bowles is not reporting that unless there's somebody was very specific and told him those numbers that he trusts. And it could be Del Conte. But Del Conte doesn't want to own that. He does not want that necessarily out there. There are reasons why they wouldn't. And so there's a weird little cat and mouse game that might have look. I can reference a story where we had a source go on national television in a pregame interview and go out of their way to try to confirm our reporting that they sourced. Like, it happens. So, and there are times when you will see or hear those things and it's like, oh, is that a call out? And it was like, no, were you paying attention to what just happened? So yesterday, Heather Dench asks Del Conte about the money that's being referenced with regards to what Texas will pay out in NIL in 2025. Specifically, Bowles gets the credit because he's the first one to report it, but he's not the only person that's reported this. Again, I reported that it was 36 and change. He reported it was between 35 and 40. And what Del Conte kind of seizes on, because I've looked back at the questioning.
The way it starts is fascinating.
The way it starts is not 35 to 40. In fact, when Heather Dench brings it up, she does not specifically ever mention a number.
Nope. She also never says Kirk Bowles' name.
Correct.
But the first thing out of Del Conte's mouth is Kirk Bowles.
Correct.
Which makes me wonder, as a pro wrestling fan, if we are watching a work in progress at Destin, Florida, and if there's like a loser leaves town match coming up later in the week.
What now takes place, the entire rest of the conversation, and this includes a back and forth of like 4 or 5 questions, where Del Conte goes up out of his way to outline the arithmetic that he thinks Bowles got wrong, while then saying literally in the very next sentence, I don't know how he did his arithmetic.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what happens.
Yes, there's a lot of, both sides of it. There's a lot of, you got this wrong. And when he's repeatedly asked, okay, get it right, clarify for us. Well, we can't do that because we don't exactly know the number.
So it's what Del Conte thinks Bowles has done is taken last year's NIL number, which was 20-ish. And he thinks that he's taken the settlement amount, the $20.5 million, and he thinks, or has reason to believe, that all Kirk did was just add those two numbers together. If you add those two numbers together, you get 40.5. He goes out of his way to say, but if that's the way he did it, it's wrong, because we've got a 75, 15, 5, and 5 split, which is actually the news here.
Yeah, can you please explain that to me? Yeah, I was going to say, please explain that to me and the folks, because I read that twice, and it was like he was saying something he thought I knew, or that he thought everybody knew about. What is he talking about with those percentages?
He's saying that I don't know. Nobody followed up with a question.
Okay. So you thought the same thing I did, because I'm like, what does he mean 75, 15, 5, 5?
I had somebody from the Texas NIL on Orange Bloods post that there were revenue sports and non-revenue sports with regards to the settlement money.
Okay.
And women's basketball and baseball were discussed as non-revenue settlement sports. Well, in my mind, I thought, if that's the case, football and men's basketball are the only two revenue sports. And but those numbers don't reflect that. Like, I don't know what that, I'm guessing that that's football, men's basketball, women's basketball, and baseball. But I don't know that. I do not know that. That could be men's basketball, that could be football, men's basketball, and then the rest of women's and men's athletics.
Yeah, because the first time it's referenced in this back and forth, it's pretty early on in Del Conte's first answer. When he
says, quote, the reality is on 20.5, we're not disseminating 20.5 by July 1st because remember, he says, remember, like this has been announced. It has not been.
Yeah.
It's 75, 15, 5, and 5. But the number got out as, oh, it's all going to be this number. They must have done this. That was not accurate, right? That was not accurate in terms of being today. This is the total number in its totality. This could be, but that is not accurate. I really don't know what he's saying here.
Right. Yeah, I'm not really sure either. It's so bizarre. And to your idea to sort of make the Gus Fring comparison, this is, in the title of the show today, like, this does not help Texas's reputation as this big dog in the SEC, this big dog in college football that just sort of looms over everything. I would tell CDC just to embrace it here, embrace the Texasness of it. But he's trying to play both sides. Catch, to your analogy today, he is trying to be the Gus Fring at the hospital.
He is.
Like writing the check and being the businessman.
He wants
and then he's
to feed the cops all the chicken they can eat.
Right. But then he also wants to be the Gus Fring that if he's got a box cutter in his hand, you might be in a lot of trouble.
No, you don't really want to know him, right?
Right.
And I think, look, to me, this is and I think the Del Conte reasoning can be explained, really. And I think it's just as simple as this. While Texas has embraced its Texasness a lot, in a lot of ways, and I think NIL is one of them. Look, Texas spent as much money as Ohio State did last year in NIL. But why didn't that get out? Why wasn't that a headline ever? Really? Because they didn't want it to be a headline. Texas doesn't mind spending the most money, but they don't want people to think they're the ones causing the push. It's one thing to be like, hey, man, we spent $36 million because have you seen what Texas Tech is doing? Have you seen all these schools are spending money? Hell, we couldn't even get a wide receiver. We couldn't even get, receivers in the portal, or we couldn't do this because schools are throwing $2 million out. Like, it's crazy out there. And like, we got to do what we got to do. It's one thing to be we got to do what we got to do school. And it's another thing that's to be seen as the school that's causing all of this.
Right.
Texas has never wanted to cause anything. You know what they're comfortable with? They're comfortable giving Steve Sarkisian or Mac Brown or any coach that's at the elite of the elite. They love the idea of, hey, man, you're in the top 3 forever. We're going to make you the second highest paid coach behind Kirby Smart by $1. And you can just be number 2 by $1 behind Kirby no matter what he earns the rest of the way. They don't mind paying the second most. They don't like a headline where it's like, as the highest paid coach in college football, freaking Texas. They're the first ones to go above 15. Like, they don't want that. So they're comfortable lying in the weeds. So for me, a lot of this is the agents out there think that Texas is spending $40 million. What they'll really do is be like, well, you've got all the money. I'm asking for 1.7 and you're offering 1.4 and you're spending $40 million and you can't give my guy $300,000. I guess they don't want to end up in those types of conversations. Mm-hmm. So I think, man, if you're admitting the number is 40-ish, that's the highest number on record. You are now the Ohio State of 2025 until someone else confirms that. So look, I think one of the reasons why he didn't want to get pinned down on a number, and the way the rest of this conversation goes, he said, he's then asked by Heather Dinich, she says, quote, when you say a number that's accurate, you're talking about
help me out.
And this is where he says, yeah, that's crazy. That's bananas. However, you're going to write that and then be the first game goes, oh, that was a roster full of 40. I mean, it's not even. That's bananas. She says, well, that's why I'm asking the question. Yeah. And he said, I just answered it, right? And then another reporter, I believe this is Pat 40, right?
40
says,
part of it too, yeah.
So what's a right number?
Yeah.
And that's when that's when the word salad really starts.
Is that when he calls Kirk Bowles Columbo? That was my favorite part.
No, we don't get that yet.
Okay, not yet. That's my favorite part. That's coming up.
We get a whole lot of him talking about the Director's Cup and we're good at swimming. and every athletic event is great. And you look at the settlement and you got to take $2 million off the cap. So it's really 18 million. And how we're disseminating that 18 million is 75, 15, 5, and 5. So that's where you're looking at, like, we're still having that discussion right now.
Yeah.
So a reporter says, well, okay, Chris. So if it's, and I'm now adding words, the wording that Anwar has specifically is, what's a fair number for football next year, encompassing everything that you know, front loading, etc.
That's a great question, by the way. Great way to ask it.
At which point it's just more word salad. It's a reference to what is fair market. It's very, he went rhetorical.
He says fair market value 2 or 3 times, thinking they're all going to just walk away and go, oh, fair market value.
He mentions the Deloitte system that will be auditing every deal.
Right, the Deloitte, yeah.
Then he mentions Dr. Pepper did a thing with Quinn, and we have a student athlete doing Uber, and once you get all that information, you have a better consensus of your answer.
By the way, if everybody and their dog knows that the Uber guy is Arch, why not just say Arch? We have a student athlete that's Uber.
So then Pat Forty says, will you tell us? Because really has turned into a game of who's on first.
Yes.
And then Del Conte says, I will, but he says, I will because Columbo.
Excuse me. Pardon me, sir. I hate to bother you. Kirk Bowles, Houston Chronicle. One question.
He says, I will because Columbo, a.k.a. Kirk Bowles, wears me out. I can always call him. Which, to me, let's stop for a second.
Yep, that's
hello, McFly.
Catch both ways. Read the last 2 sentences again, out loud.
I will because Columbo wears me out.
Okay, that means Bowles communicates with him a lot. Now finish it.
I can always call him.
And he communicates with Bowles. Like, there it is. He just laid it out for you.
I mean, he literally says that.
I don't know what CDC was eating or drinking or whatever. If we can get that exact combo of whatever the intake, coffee.
So hold on. Let's finish this, okay?
Yeah, I want this guy all the time.
So then another reporter, not Pat Forty, says, what's it close to, you think? What's close to the final number? Now, look, this is a really fair question because the one thing that Del Conte's made a point of doing is saying the 40 number, which is only a piece of what Kirk reported. It's the high end. It's the ceiling.
Yes.
The number that he reported is a gap of $5 million.
Right. He went 35 to 40.
And so he's like, can you give us a number? You're saying this number is wrong. What's a right-ish number?
Yeah.
And Del Conte says, I don't know yet because we don't know what fair market value is going to say.
So I don't know yet. It'd be really great if he had said, I don't know yet. Might be 60. Like that would have been, that'd have been sort of Texas of him to do that. That's so weird.
So Bowles at that point says, Kirk Bowles then steps in. He's been there the entire time.
Yeah.
And he says, so my story is wrong. Now stop. Stop for a second.
Yeah.
This is yes or no. Kirk Bowles asks, so my story is wrong. He's asking Chris Del Conte, hey, man, say what you got to say, big boy. What are you saying?
Pretty black or white.
And Chris Del Conte reportedly said, quote, well, and again, I need you guys to listen to what I'm about to say. This is a critical element of this entire conversation, and I pointed it out as among the first things we said. But I need to reference it again because it's about to happen. Del Conte says, quote, well, because you combined 2 years that were out of whack. But we don't know where you got your information from either. If you don't know where he got his information from, how did you know that that's what he did? Because Bowles then says it's not 2 years. It's NIL plus revenue share.
Yeah.
Bowles is literally saying, this is what I'm reporting, and this is how I got that number. At which point Del Conte says, but you combined a number that wasn't even accurate. It's not 20.5 million because we don't have 25 million to spend on football. It's 75, 15, 5, and 5. At which point, what Kurt needed to interrupt him and say is, is it between 35 and 40? Because that's what I reported. And what you're saying is, I need to take 2 million off the 20.5 to get it down to 18.5, which would leave the number at 38. Is 38 a bad number? Oh, but you're also saying, and you're not completely sure, that it might be 75, 15, 5, and 5, right? Well, Chad, what is, if I go, let me see if you can do the math. I'm just going to do 18 million, okay? Do you know what 75% of 18 million is?
75% of 18 million. Off the top of my head, I'm what? What's that? 13 or 14?
13.5 million.
Okay.
Which, if you add that to last year's NIL, gets you at, again, it's a rough number because we said 20-ish.
Mm-hmm.
It would get you at 33.5 million. I've been told the number is 36. And I was not told that's concrete. I was told there might be a little bit of some hundos added to that number as well.
Yeah.
So so at that point, he could say it's not 35. That's a big statement at that point. That means the entire report is out wrong, but he doesn't do that. So Bowles then says and then he goes on to say, however you reported it, it's 2 numbers in one. It was 2 numbers. That's not how it got added up. It's not how it got calculated. You made an amendment to your article like in the newspaper back in the day. You used to make the wrong article correction on the back page, page 9. My bad. Well, my bad doesn't work nowadays because it's already out in the system. Bowles says, so we'll see, since you don't have a real number. And Del Conte says it's 2 years. Man. Guys, that is the most fucking orangebloods.com conversation that has ever occurred at SEC Media Days. That was one person saying, checkmate, you don't have a real number. And that was the person responding with, F your checkmate, it's 2 years, checkmate. And so both guys declaring checkmate to each other while making rhetorical comments as taglines to go with them. And the whole thing is, Chad, as we discussed, this is about Texas wanting to control the perception, not wanting to be overly specific because careful when you're being emphatic. But at the same time, he wouldn't even say, yes, your report was wrong. He tried to quibble with his perception of how the number, not even that the number was wrong. The nitpick is you got that number wrong. Not that you're wrong in the spirit of the number. The way you added to get that number was wrong. It's as if he's almost saying, you know what? If I'm a teacher, this happens with my kids. They have to show their work. And if they show the work and the showing of the work doesn't show how they got the number, the teacher's just going to assume that they used a calculator. And so what it feels like is Bowles correctly guessed the number. And I will stand on a table and say that my own sourcing has given me a number that's in line with what Bowles reported. It's on the lower end.
Yeah, it's in the neighborhood.
But it's inside the window.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest, if somebody told me, hey, Catch, the number's 36 and change, but you can't report that. And I'll be fully transparent. My source did not ever say that. But I have to be honest, when I thought about it with a little bit of time to rethink our conversation, and I thought, and Chad, you will know this, I didn't get real specific in the early conversations of the number. I was like, oh, I was a little squeamish. I was like, it's in the ballpark. It's ish. Because I thought, you know what? If I was reporting this for the first time, and somebody gave me specifically that number, the safe thing to do would be exactly what Bowles did. Pick a number frame that it's in the middle of.
Right.
And I think it's interesting that what Bowles, I think it's a hell of a thing that, and to be clear, Del Conte never came out and said that Kurt Bowles is flat out wrong. What he's arguing is how Bowles got to his number from a stylistic mathematical process of way.
Right. Even though Bowles quickly tells him that's not what he did.
And Del Conte keeps saying it's two numbers. And Bowles keeps saying you're wrong. And this is how you're wrong. And it's as if Del Conte is not going to acknowledge that concession. Bowles is showing his homework at that point. No,
right.
What I did was I added this number plus this number. And
yeah, they're both talking two numbers. It's just, so Del Conte's arguing that it's separated over 2 years, and Bowles is saying, no, I use these two numbers, that one plus that one. And then CDC won't acknowledge that.
And one of the things that's interesting about this conversation is that when Del Conte brings up the Deloitte system, this goes into what I reported in the War Room, I think a week or two ago. Honestly, Chad, it all blends together. Maybe you'll be able to remember my own writing better than myself. But I had a big update about all of this because Texas thinks that once the Deloitte system in the settlement goes through, that you're going to see the costs of college football come way down. That while the number is 40 this year, that number could be closer to 20 next year. Well, how does that happen? Well, the way this system is supposed to work, and he kind of talks about this, where if someone's got what he references a deal with Dr. Pepper, he's saying a deal like that and a deal like the Uber deal, because those are mainstream big boy companies, those deals aren't going to get red flagged. What's going to get red flagged is if Sam's Bait Shop is paying Quinn Ewers $500,000 a year, and there's no algorithm or proof that would suggest that person's market value is that high. Now, they have an algorithm that's been built that every single deal that's done is supposed to go through this algorithm. It's supposed to spit something out and say, this is what the market value is. And if something is twice that number, then they're, in theory, going to revoke. They will, I guess, revoke. They won't authorize the approval of those deals. The schools think this is going to happen widespread. I think this is going to lead to 1 million lawsuits, because if you're a defensive tackle in the portal next year and you are, let's say, all SEC level good, let's say you're Walter Nolan. I don't know how you go back next year and you say, we offer you $250,000. It's like $250,000. The going rate was $2 million last year. Yeah, well, the going rate's different this year. Says who? You're just going to have to trust us on this. There's an algorithm. Huh. Well, the other kid went to Oklahoma and made $600,000 a year before that. You just start listing all of the examples of this was the established market value. And I don't know how the schools turn around and say, no, that was pay for play. I thought pay for play wasn't. So
it wasn't allowed.
Wasn't allowed. So you're saying you did pay for play? You know what I mean? There's some really complicated legal things that are going to take place moving forward. The thing that Del Conte doesn't say, though, is the Deloitte system won't be in place by this year. I've not had anybody tell me, hey, that 36 number, don't even sweat that. It's going to be more like 20 by the time Deloitte gets to all of this. No, the expectation is that this season is grandfathered, and the settlement money will be active right away. So the money will go in, and next year when the Deloitte system is in its full year one use, that number that was 36 may come way down, because a lot of the numbers that schools around the country have been putting together with their collectives won't pass the smell test. It's also one of the reasons, I'm pretty sure this was in the War Room, this is why you scan that bar down there. Because we have this way in advance of everybody else. These are the conversations that we have on orangebloods.com, and eventually they're conversations that everybody else has. So what they're hoping, this is what I reported, is that they're anticipating that those numbers go way down, that next year the cost won't look anything like this year, because they expect that auditing system to be the checks and balances in the entire sport. Now, Chad, you and I could ask 100 questions that lawyers will think of when this auditing system comes into play. And who knows how big of a backbone and stomach Deloitte and the NCAA have, because we know they tried to set up rules with regards to when and when you can't transfer. And we had a guy in a couple of months ago who was like, yeah, no, I'm entering the portal and I'm transferring to a school and you're not stopping me. And what happened? The NCAA put out a statement that was like, we don't really like it, but yeah, that kid can do that.
Yeah. Bottom line, I think I agree with Text Guy here. Bottom line, Kirk Bowles reads the War Room. You should too. Yes, Text Guy. Exactly. Hit that QR code. Get signed up for orangebloods.com. All right, Catch, take a breath here. I'm trying to figure out what my next question might be. We'll also remind you guys, almost 400 of you in the Specs chat. Thank you all for jumping in. Let's thank one of our great partners, and it is the return of AV Consultations. So glad to be telling you about AV Consultations once again. They help me with my surveillance system at the house. They can do that for you. You want cameras outside the house, multiple cameras, making sure everything is safe when you're at home and when you're not. They can do that for you. They can also, maybe it's exterior lighting, maybe some of that landscape lighting systems, all that stuff, sound systems, or what's right in their name, AV Consultations, audio visual consultations. Since 1988, they've been making sure you have the setup you want in the house. New house, your old house, new screen, bigger screen. I keep saying it. Don't ever let Uncle Joe or your grandma out TV you. Don't let grandma out screen you at Thanksgiving. Don't let it happen. If grandma just got a 70-inch TV, you know what you need. A 75-inch TV minimum. And they can help you with that. AV Consultations, 255-8678 or avconsultations.com. The TV setups and so much more with AV. This is kind of like a story today. The one story and then so much more.
I got to say something, Chad.
Okay. I
got to. We can't move on.
I assume. Okay, go ahead.
I love the product shaming in the AV Consultations. Like, it is so effective. If your grandmother has a bigger TV than you do, you know what you have to do. That is so messed up. And yet it is so accurate. It is messed up that you would shame the men. Like, a guy sitting around with a 70-inch TV, and if grandma has 72, he has to get 75. I don't know. I've never been a fan of product shaming to make someone buy something. And yet I cannot argue with the logic of, you can't let old people out TV. You can't.
And it's not just men, Catch. If Michelle, your non-enchilada sister, goes to Aunt Marie's house, and Aunt Marie's got like an 80-inch TV, and Michelle's a big-time sports fan that needs the best TV, guess what she's going to do? She's got to go find an 85-inch TV. Or
I don't think that's right. I think that's nice of you to try to include my, sister from another mother or sister from another mister.
I think the ladies think that. Ladies can think that way too.
But I don't think they do.
Maybe not as much.
I know women that if you said that, they would go, okay, well, I'll just read a book. So I don't know a guy that would be like, you know what I learned this weekend? That my grandmother's TV is 20 inches bigger than my TV. I don't care. I've never heard a man say that. My wife doesn't get overly impressed by the size of TVs.
All right. I'm just trying to get women to AV consultations.
Well, that's fair. You know what? Yeah, just catch.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. There you go.
But I'm saying the pitch to men is the best. I think that's the most effective sales pitch I've ever heard in my entire life.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. We appreciate you guys in the chat and super chats. All right, Catch. I'm not sure what my next question is, but I know you have more thoughts. So It might be better just to let you keep going, because I'm not sure if I'd ask the right question.
I think the last thing that I would just say is it's funny to me that, I think of I made the comparison that Texas doesn't want to be thought of as Kaiser Söze, that's not who they want to be seen as.
Mm-hmm.
As the boogeyman, as all these problems in NIL and Texas is creating them. But to use another Kaiser Sözeism, I just think the funniest trick that the devil ever played was convincing Texas fans that Kirk Bohls doesn't have access to people. Texas fans are like, all that guy does is try to hurt the university. He's public enemy number one. We can't ever forgive the fact that he didn't vote for Vince Young for the Heisman. Man, this Kirk Bohls is always talking to the right people. He is. I'm telling you as a reporter. I'm telling you as somebody that competes against him for stories. He's one of the people. There's a breaking news item that Orange Bloods needs to report Kirk Bohls is competition. Not everybody is. The idea that it blows my mind. It blows my mind that Texas fans have convinced themselves he's such the devil that he has no contacts after 40 years of covering the team.
Yeah. No, that notion is silly. What I'm trying to figure out, Catch, is
I was writing books on Texas football when I was a freshman in high school.
We've had Kirk on the show. He's a legend. We know that. And like you said, there's substance to it. Here's what I'm trying to figure out though. Why did it get to name calling that fast? If we assume a work on any level that the two of them are communicating and that CDC.
Because you can. Because you can call him Columbo and he's not going to be offended by it because they're boys.
Right. I get that part. Right. Okay. But if all that's a part of CDC and
he meant that as a funny jab. He did not mean that as.
Right. Exactly. Because half the people standing there probably don't even know who Columbo is.
No, they all did. They all knew that. They all got it.
Does he mean Mark Columbo? Anyway, so
what was that band that he and Leonard Davis were in?
Oh, God. Yeah, that metal band. I can't remember the name of it. It was like Screams of Agony or Demons of Darkness or something like that. It was a very metal name for a band. So Heather Dinich basically asked the question because she claims Pat McAfee asked her. She literally says that. So
she does.
All CDC, and she never said, I read a report. In fact, she says clearly, I said, I've never seen any papers that tell me exactly how much money. So she's saying it's nebulous to her. Can you make it less nebulous? And CDC's first words are, and I think with all due respect to Kirk here, and then goes on. That's the part I'm not understanding. Why bring Kirk up immediately? You could discuss numbers. Kirk could jump back and forth with you. And by the end of all this, Catch, do you think CDC, once he and Kirk Bohls or whoever were in a room alone, do you think his response to all of this was, nailed it?
Some version of that?
Do you think he feels like, mic drop?
I think it's more like,
now they get it.
I think there's a old smoke-filled bar in Destin full of mahogany. And I think they met there late last night.
The Ron Burgundy bar?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it smelled of fine mahogany. And, have you ever gone to the bar inside the Driscoll? All that wood and
yes.
It feels like something out of the 1800s. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It feels like everything that's done in that room is political to this day.
No, it's like LBJ killed somebody in here, didn't he?
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure a president 80 years ago, murdered somebody in this room. That at least has got to be even odds. So yes. I kind of feel like that kind of room. And I think they ordered shots of bourbon or something. I don't know. They got their drinks. And I think the first words probably were how'd that go? How do you think that went? Because I do think they had a
So-
conversation beforehand where it's like, hey, man, if I get asked about this, FYI, I got to do what I got to do. And I think Bowles probably like, okay.
Yeah, and I got to do what I got to do.
There, at no point does he really question Kirk Bowles' ability to report. He's saying, let me tell you why and how it's wrong, but then saying, but I really don't know for sure that that's even what I'm talking about. That in itself is a weird confession that these two guys at some point have had a conversation about this.
There are three important.
He knows where Kirk got his math from.
There are three important things. I think he may believe he clarified, but I could argue he didn't clarify any of them. One is the obvious, the money stuff we've been talking about. Two is what he meant by 75, 15, 5, and 5. Because I read it and I was confused. I figured you'd come on the show today and just explain it to me. And I go, oh, I missed it. If you're telling me it hasn't been fully explained, he missed that opportunity. And then the other one, Catch.
I'm going to ask right now, okay? I'm going to text somebody and ask if I can get clarification on that.
Okay. The other thing that I think needs to be clarified, it's a little one, but he referenced July 1st, and I've heard multiple references to July 1st. Somebody might need to let us all know that they expect to be able to throw the disbursements out July 1st. This settlement's not done yet. It was supposed to be April. It still hasn't come out, but he's discussing it like it's July 1st. Anwar had a note in a war room a couple weeks ago. Again, get to that QR code, get signed up for orangebloods.com. Thursday nights, we're talking to you on a Thursday. Thursday nights, war room. Anwar had the note in the war room where multiple people representing different teams were assuming, oh yeah, no, because we know that the settlement stuff, that's good July 1st. Like we can roll July 1st, but that's not out there. It's not technically out there. So to me, there were three things that could have been clarified. He didn't clarify any of them. And it just, I don't know, comes off looking weird. And I understand your thought that Texas doesn't want to be railroaded. They don't want to be forced into stuff money-wise, but they can't pretend like they're not at the high end.
Well, they got the day before.
You got to find a balance.
The day before, Steve Sarkisian kind of threw water on that 40 number as well. But then was like, I wish I had another 10 or 15 million to spend. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean, you at some point,
they don't want to be seen as poor.
No.
But they don't want to be seen as like,
but
they don't want to be, what they don't want to be seen as is Elon buying Twitter for vanity purposes. You know what I mean? Like you're just setting money on fire and it's like, well,
right.
And then there are ulterior motives behind all of that. And like, you can argue it's a long game, but they don't want to be seen as being foolish with their money. And, I think they feel like if that 40 number gets out and then it gets out that other schools are at 20 or 25, then it undermines. And the other thing is they hate that money gets credit for anything.
Right. That's another part of it.
I can tell you there have been recruits that Brandon Baker is a perfect example. Brandon Baker went on record as saying in an interview while he was being recruited that he was going to pick the school that offered him the most NIL money. Chad and I to this day find his candor refreshing. Just say it.
Yeah, I like it.
When Texas landed Brandon Baker, there were people behind the scenes that bristled over the nature. Well, NIL did that. It was like, well, don't forget about the coaches and the relationships and the time that it was spent. No, we get it. Like a ton of sweat equity goes into these things, but we also can't pretend that that kid never said that and that you did offer the most NIL money.
Well, okay. Here's another question that pops in my head, Catch. I'm going to say this, and then I want you to tell me if CDC would take this as a compliment or an insult, or would he be freaked out? I read an article today, one of those articles where they have a lot of like anonymous people talking, right? This was like anonymous coaches and administrators around the SEC and around college football.
Okay.
And there were comments about Texas, and the one that really stood out to me was a great word that was maybe invented here, but someone said they're doing a great job and they are professionalizing college football better than anybody. And I read it and I thought, man, if I'm in the power at Texas, I take that as a huge compliment. Do you agree? And do you think CDC would take that as a compliment? Or do you think he'd hear the word and see the word professionalizing and almost want to run from it?
I think everybody behind the scenes not named Christo Conte would find that incredibly flattering and a pat on the back for kind of really how hard they've worked. You know, if you go back to the very beginning, when you think back to the Texas One Fund, when it was released, when that information broke, there were a lot of people. By the way, Texas leading Florida 3-0, top of the sixth, no outs, runners on, like attaboy Longhorns in game one of the Women's College World Series.
There's a start.
When that came out, before that happened in the months, maybe even a year, you know, the Longhorns announced the Pancake Factory in December of 2021. Then a lot of time went by before anything else was ever mentioned again. People were wondering why there weren't other pancake type factory deals for other positions. And when will we hear what Texas is doing, right? Because all of the headlines have been about all these other schools. When Texas announced the Texas One Fund, I had been hearing about it for months and months and months, but it was being vetted by the IRS. There were things that were being processed in terms that needed to be approved specifically to what they did, that made what they were doing with the Texas One Fund and NIL completely different than the way the rest of the country had been doing. I think now we're seeing what they've really learned is that it's a little bit like House Divided and Orange Bloods. There's a big pot of money in theory, and all of the YouTube and all of the website money goes in. And if we were to say, what does Orange Bloods, the entity, make? It'd be a combined total. But we could split them up, and we would say, wow, okay, well, Orange Bloods makes a lot more money than YouTube. It is the wife in this instance. And if we were using was it Bo or Dion that used the one's my wife and the other one is my mistress? Do you remember that?
That sounds like a Dion, but I'm not sure.
It does sound like a Dion.
Yeah, sounds more like Dion.
But so there's a little bit of, I think that what they've figured out that I think goes in line with that comment is that long-term wise, so let's take my word for it, or my source's word for it, that next year the number is going to be 20. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Just for simple math at this point.
Okay.
I think they feel like the money that's not paid out by the collective, which we've said it will be at least 13.5. If it's 75 of 18, then that's 13.5. Then they would say, if they think the remainder of that 20, 6.5, they would say that money needs to be big deals. That can't be collective money as best as possible. When our collective helps people get money, it has to be able to pass an audit. Now, if we can get Dr. Pepper to say that Quinn Ewers is $1 million athlete because they're a big corporation, and look, that's different than a collective. Those are never going to get red flagged. And I think what Texas has realized is that the future of what they do won't be Texas One Fund. It really won't, because those deals can get flagged. Now, Texas One Fund will be incredibly important for softball and basketball and baseball and a lot of other sports where maybe hitting numbers isn't, if you have a softball player who has a million followers on Instagram and maybe the algorithm says she's worth $1 million, then you can give her a $500,000 deal and nobody will blink. But if you've got someone who's nothing more than a really good rower and they have no social media presence and there doesn't appear to be a market for their wares, then it's going to be, you would need that to come through the collective. If it's a crazy number from the collective, then it's going to get red flagged and probably not go through. So I think what that thing is, I think they're ahead of the game with the trends. And I think this goes back to even last year, Chad, What did we talk about that Texas was doing that was different than everybody else with regards to NIL? They weren't getting caught up in the spending stuff early on. And they lost guys.
They were patient.
They weren't coming. Michael Fasusi committed to Oklahoma, and Texas never really gave him an NIL number. In fact, when that happened, initially I had sources that were telling me, is that even a good way to invest our money? Should we put $1 million into an offensive lineman if he doesn't play next year? And then by the end of the year, they realized the tackle depth wasn't all that great. And they were like, you know what? Yeah, 7 figures, Michael Fasusi, let's do it. But they really did figure out that the way to use your NIL game is late and strong, and don't let anybody have time to respond. And you think about how they partially how they got Justice Terry was, man, we're not even going to mention a number to that dude until 2 weeks before signing day. But when we do, it's going to change things. And it did. When they finally presented their NIL package to Justice Terry, it was more than what 2 other 5-star defensive tackles who were committed to Georgia were getting. And in order for Georgia to thus go get Justice Terry, it would have thrown off everything. What they were paying the other 2 guys, what the new barometer might be for them in terms of what they're paying 5 stars. Like it was so problematic that it was a poison pill offer. And it worked. And it left Texas, what Texas knew is that we talked about this with LSU and a few other schools. Man, if you'd let everybody know in April or May how much you're spending, all of those schools have 6 or 7 months to figure out, well, look, man, if we want to go get this guy, we know what the bar is. And Texas used that to their advantage late. And I think they're doing an excellent job. I don't think they're perfect. You know, that's a hard thing to rope. What is perfection in this day and age? I think they do a really good job, though. And they're not getting everybody, but they did sign the number 1 recruiting class in the country last year. And a lot of that is built on the backs of guys that live from places, Justice Terry among them, that up until NIL kicked in, Texas wasn't landing guys from that part of the world. Texas was not creating roots in Georgia until NIL became a thing. And that also coincides really nicely that right about the time that Sarkisian took over. They go hand in hand. If you're Sarkisian, you can say, hey, it's just me. But I think most people will realize it's a combination of those things. Sark is an amazing recruiter, but he's armed with an NIL war chest. It's just different than most people, almost everybody.
Thank y'all for jumping in the Specs chat today. Let's get you another reminder. You only have a couple days left to take advantage of the Tequila sale at Specs. It runs through the end of the month. Here are some beautiful bottles to remind you.
It's tequila time. Who's ready for a margarita? Shake things up all month long with discounts on Blancos, Reposados, and Añejo tequila during Specs Tequila sale.
All right, Catch. Any more of this story to break down here, or you want to buy or sell?
Let's buy or sell. I've got questions today.
Oh, nice. You want to go first or second?
I'll go second. I think a couple of my questions are really good.
All righty. Let's start here, Catch. Buy or sell number 1. You like the 4-4-2-2-1-3 idea for the CFP.
We're breaking down 4-4-2-2. What's the 1 and the 3?
So 4 SEC, 4 Big 10, 2 Big 12, 2 ACC, 1 either G5 champ or Notre Dame if they're higher ranked, and then 3 wild cards.
Buy. I don't hate it.
Right now, that is the most. Yeah, right now that's the most popular system being discussed. And another element of it is the next one. Buy or sell number 2. You like the idea of play-in games for the SEC at the end of the regular season.
Buy. Give me more fun games. Yeah. Like, I don't know how fair it is.
It's a wild-ass idea, man. I know why they're thinking of it, but boy, if you work that out in your brain, I'm not sure if it does what they think it's going to do.
I don't know what's happening here.
I don't know. I'll put it this way, Catch. Late last year, if you fight through the whole season and then somebody tells you, okay, you're in the playoff, just beat South Carolina. Wait, what? Who?
Well, look, and what do I always tell you? This is really important. This really tells, I think, a lot about sports for me and what I value. Got to have something on the line. Like I can watch anything if I know the stakes.
Yeah, especially when we're talking about football and how dangerous it is for these guys. Like,
if you
really
televise the neighborhood pickup football game, but the loser of the game was grounded for a month with no iPads,
right?
I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm in.
Well, think about what happened.
I will watch neighborhood grounding games for sure. Put that on Netflix. I'm in.
Think about what they did in softball this year, Catch, because of weather. It was weird. A&M and Oklahoma were supposed to play for the title, but they didn't because there was horrible weather. So what did they do? They just didn't play. They said, okay, we'll split the championship. Why? Because they had to get on to what really mattered, the tournament, the actual tournament. It was a weird deal, and it should almost be a message to other sports.
Look, I don't know that I would like it if I was one of the school. I don't know. I really need to process it a little bit more. But as a consumer, I'm watching the hell out of those games.
Absolutely. As a fan, it's a great idea. I kind of dug it. I mean, I'm one in the NBA. I thought it was silly at first, but I've watched those playing games. They kind of matter.
The thing about playing games in college football is that you're not asking what you're asking in basketball. What we love about the tournament is the idea of upsets. Mm-hmm. So if you give us a 16 versus 16 or an 11 versus 11 game, we wouldn't watch that ever. We don't. We literally don't watch those. But when they're in and you put numbers, and we'll watch anything that was like, even when there's an 8-9, we're like, well, got to see if there's an upset. Like, it's the way our brains are programmed. There have to be stakes. And a football play-in game between the 17th and the 20th best teams in the country, just as an idea, is a lot more like, I will consume the hell out of that versus the idea of, well, these are either the 65th or the 66th. You know what I mean? You start doing that.
Yeah.
And
I did at the end of last year, if they say to Georgia, all right, just beat Ole Miss and now you're in. Like, whoa, wait a minute. We just went through this whole schedule and we got to play them again, or I don't know. We'll see if that's where
the idea of starting everything 1 week earlier and then I have it 4 play. I like the idea of, hey man, we're going to ask some teams to win 4 games. You have to win 5. We're going to have 4 games of 8 that are playing games.
And you still have wild card spots. Technically, if a Texas or Georgia were to lose that game, maybe they're not out. I don't know.
I'm sorry. It's better than what we have. I do not want to hear it's going to lose the luster of the regular season. Stop. Because Texas's regular season last year was dope.
I am
They beat the Aggies. They beat Arkansas. They beat everybody but Georgia in the regular season. And nobody cared. Honestly, those Georgia games don't even get brought up that much other than to say we didn't. It's all about what the last game of the season was.
Yeah, we'll see.
It's that way. I'm sorry, it is.
We'll see if that's what they want to do. Keep your eyes peeled on those Destin meetings and elsewhere. Speaking of Texas's schedule, Catch, buy or sell number 3. OU kick time's been set for 2:30. The Aggie game is a 6:30 kick. Those two should never change. Lock them in forever.
I tell you what, I will buy if you tell me we could handshake agree right now and that those would be locked. It's not ideal. I would love to see a primetime Texas OU game. However, I would make that deal if it meant never an 11 a.m. Texas OU game ever again. Yeah. Ever.
I agree with everything you just said because we know they're not going nighttime. Let me just show it.
You could make it noon, and I'd shake hands on it. It'd be like, you know what?
Right.
An extra hour on that Saturday morning. Love it. How do I get some of that?
Let me show Texas fans what is out officially now. It's official on the 11 o'clock Ohio State, 11 for San Jose State. You see the afternoon kick with UTEP. Sam is
that UTEP game is going to be hot.
Woo, that's a warm one, isn't it? UTEP, get ready, Miners. September 13th could be a blazer at 3:15, 7 o'clock for Sam, 2:30
Jesus,
OU.
man, 3:15.
I'm telling you. Hey, if y'all are trying to figure out whether or not you're going to the San Jose State game or the UTEP game, go see the San Jose State game.
Dude, the thing is, I remember all of the hottest games I've ever been to.
Me too.
And I rarely remember much. For instance, the NC State game in '99.
Yep.
I went with a date. We sat. It was the only time I've ever sat on the east side upper deck.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so. I was so miserable. It was about 100. It wasn't like 105. It wasn't one of those crazy temperatures, but it was a good 100 in the sun the entire game.
Yep.
And I just remember walking away like, I will never do that again in my entire life. I wore a suit on the field, which was, it was 150 degrees on the AstroTurf for the Rashaan Salam game.
Oh, God.
And I was in a suit.
That's terrible.
And I'll never forget going back up at halftime and like having drenched through the suit.
Yeah. There's only two stand out to me. Ironically, it's both sides of House Divided. The Route 66 game is one of the hottest games I've ever been to in my life. And there was an A&M LSU game, a September game, back when that was non-conference. And it was like 96 with, humidity, like just about only College Station can provide. Catch, I thought I was going to die. I mean, it was so hot. Those
on
are
the other side of the spectrum
that stand out.
This won't be the coldest game that Texas ever played in, but it is the most cold, miserable I've ever seen Texas fans. 1991 Cotton Bowl.
Oh, I can only imagine.
And
Yeah.
I remember seeing some stock footage of that game. And
cold.
He wasn't a coach for me, but he coached at McCallum. His name was Jim Raup. He was a lawyer in Austin. His son went to McCallum, Jim Raup Jr. And somehow I got stock video of Jim Raup at the game.
Damn.
And I mean, they lose 46-3. So you take the sadness that comes with that thrashing.
Yeah.
And add it to the coldest, most miserable looking weather that you could possibly find for an early morning kickoff again in Dallas. And add those two things together.
Yeah.
It is the most miserable I've ever seen a human being's face look like.
Yeah, that's brutal. That's brutal stuff. All right, so you do have some of those kick times ready to go. OU's at 2:30, A&M officially 6, and we're official. Ohio State is an 11 a.m. kick. Duh. All right, Catch. Buy or sell number 4. Mel B is 50 years old today. You can tell me which Spice Girl she is.
Buy. Mel B is the darker complexioned woman.
That is true.
She's
I meant in terms of the Spice Girl monikers, which Spice Girl she is.
Yeah, she's Mel
That is
B's
true.
black. There was only one black woman in the. I don't even know.
There you
There's
go.
sporty.
That's what I'm asking for. What is she?
There's Mel B.
She's the something. She's something Spice.
Oh, I thought she was just Mel B because they literally reference her as
every
Mel B
one
in
of
songs.
them is referred to as something Spice, and you just
posh, sporty, grumpy, sleepy. She's sleepy.
That is she is Doc Spice. That is right. No, that's not true. She's Scary Spice. just to let you know.
Yeah,
and finally, buy or sell number 5.
Well, who's the 4th?
Baby. Did we say Baby?
That was the Jerry Hollowell
There's
one.
Baby
Blondie?
Spice. There's Ginger.
Oh,
Victoria is posh, right? Posh, scary, and sporty. Yeah.
I think you
no,
baby.
I believe Baby Spice is the real thing. That's the
There's
Baby
4 of
Spice
them,
is
right?
the blonde.
How many
There's 5 of them,
Spice Girls are there? Oh, okay.
Blonde, the redhead, Victoria, the one I can't think of her name, that's sporty, and then scary is Mel B.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
My wife and I are watching the Pee Wee Herman documentary. When you were a kid, you watched Pee Wee's Playhouse by yourself.
Sell on the spirit of the question, the way I didn't watch. I have seen
Not a
Pee Wee's
consistent
Playhouse.
fan.
But the thing that I would say is I never liked the show and I never watched it. It just came on at a time back in the day when there just weren't a lot of channels. So, sometimes it was just on because I can remember being at my grandmother's house and she didn't have cable. And I had like 4 channels. And so sometimes Pee Wee's Playhouse might be the only thing on TV that was for an 8-year-old or something like that, that I could tolerate. But
all right.
I understand I've seen enough of the show that I could describe it, but it was never my jam.
All right, and that documentary, 2 parts, is on HBO if you want to check it out. All right, before we get
Big Adventure.
Before we get Catch's buy or sell, we'll pay one more bill, and it is a yummy one. Taste on Main, downtown Buda. Here are some images of brunch. One of the times that I was there. Upper left is the beignets. They're awesome if you're into beignets. Couple of desserts as well in the middle, a creme brulee and a pound cake, both excellent. Upper right is a couple of drinks. The Sam Elliott's Mustache, that's the whiskey drink that I'm almost done with in that picture. And that shake-looking thing is like a bourbon milkshake. And they'll do stuff like that from time to time. It was tasty. Make sure you get your reservation. I'll throw up a little QR code for you in case you want to get to it that way. Taste on Main, downtown Buda. This is Travis and Tamara and the crew that also brings you Hayes City Store. This is their steakhouse. I'm mentioning the brunch, but it's also a badass steakhouse right there in downtown Buda. Go check them out at Taste on Main. It is so good. All right, Catch, finish us up. What's your buy or sell?
Buy or sell number 1. I'm waiting for it to pop up. Hold on.
I see it right
now. Conte and Bowles don't send each other Christmas cards, but they might buy each other a drink on the road.
That feels like a buy. Yeah, that feels like a buy. I think we'd be I think that's I think that'd be above board and everyone would understand that. Yes, I think occasionally there is a drink purchased. Absolutely.
Buy or sell number 2. A new commercial spot with Camille will debut for AV Consultations in the next month. Camilla.
That is a buy. I can confirm. Let's see. There are 3 new spots, and there are 3 new spots that are going to be hitting, and Camilla's voice, I think, is on all 3 of them. So yes.
Okay. Because it's always a treat to find out how she stabs her old man in the kidney.
Camilla referring to her dad as old man.
As old man,
check.
Yeah.
Check. Tom referring to her as kid. Check. It's all there. It's all there. Everything you want is there, and including the magic phrase that they are known for is in one of those 3 spots.
Oh, I can't wait. Buy or sell number that makes my day better. Buy or sell number 3. Jerry Jones should coach the Dallas Cowboys for 1 season before he dies.
It is an absolute capital B buy. I don't know why it hasn't happened. He is that big of a goof. He is that, he has to go to bed dreaming of Al Davis on some level.
I'm okay with it, Chad.
And for the people who don't know, Al Davis coached the Raiders at one point. He gave it a shot. Jerry should have done it already, Catch. I'd be okay with him doing it. I have reconciled what I need to reconcile as a Cowboys fan. Jerry, please, just give it a shot. It's a buy.
I would be okay with it. It would actually make this. I would honestly be so much more entertained during the course of a season, either way, than I would be if I was just judging the head coach the way I judge normal Dallas Cowboys head coaches.
And the great news for Jerry, Catch, would be that week in and week out, he would actually probably do less radio shows than he does now. He'd get a little time off.
If they went 10-7, doesn't it change the dynamics of what we ask of our – suddenly the idea of Ted Lasso being a real thing feels like it would be on the table. I'm all for it. Buy or sell number 4. The T-Wolves didn't just lose to Oklahoma City. They got punked by them in a 5-game series.
I mean, overall, that's a buy. They got dominated. When Oklahoma City – and it's not like I'm insulting them by saying it. When Oklahoma City jumps you, they jump you. They don't leave. They're like a tornado that goes to the baseboards, man. They don't leave a thing when they attack when you're getting busted out of a series and you score 9 points in the first quarter, 9. I mean, you're getting tore up. They should have stopped the game, Catch. That should have been like a skunking in ping pong when we were young. Did y'all have a score in ping pong where you just stopped? If it was like 11-0, you just quit playing. We're done. They should have called that a skunk last night at 25-9.
They made them play that out. That was cold-blooded.
That's a holy butt kicking. Oklahoma City is a machine, and I would definitely pick them to win the title right now.
All I know is, man, maybe that's what you have to deal with. I remember being on some ass kickings at McAllen back in the day in high school. Reagan dropped a 42-0 on us. Travis dropped a 48-0 on us. They didn't run clocks. We had to suffer.
No. Hey, did you catch that post-game press thing with Anthony Edwards and Mike Conley? Did you catch that weirdness?
Anthony Edwards is not ready to be the guy that he thinks he is.
They asked Anthony Edwards about, are you crushed? Are you upset? Or what the word was? Are you disappointed? Whatever. And he literally sat there next to Mike Conley, who's like 38, and said, "No, I'm good, man. I'm 23. I got a lot." And then he was like, "Oh, I mean, I feel bad. I couldn't do it for Mike." And it's like, dude, he's sitting right there. It was so crazy.
All right. And finally, buy or sell number 5. I watched the original Transformers movie today because I'm doing a John Turturro top 10 over the weekend.
Interesting. All right.
Which is how the whole Miller's Crossing thing came up.
Okay.
Yesterday. Prime on prime hotter than. So you know where I'm going with this.
Oh, I would assume, yeah.
Megan Fox, because I think her prime on prime is on the car in Transformers, sweaty, grimy, dirty Megan Fox. Hotter than the hottest version of Britney Spears that ever existed. And I feel like this is a man's games question.
This really is a man's game. Well done. It's well played. Megan Fox, prime on prime, hotter than Britney Spears.
So Megan in Transformers on the Camaro.
Yeah.
Is it Britney in the red leather?
This is a great battle, Catch, because I'm such a huge fan of like a really, really hot brunette. And Megan is about, I mean, you could have a machine make a hot brunette, and I don't know that it does any better than her.
She looks like an AI in the movie.
She just looks incredible, and Shia LaBeouf's reactions to her are epic. But man, if you're just saying the absolute best of Britney, golly.
I told you it's a man's game today. That's why I wanted to go second. We needed to end the show today on Megan Fox in her prime, hotter than Britney Spears in her prime.
We have gotten 2 buys, and we've gotten a no one's hotter than Britney's prime. And ironically, it's from Michelle that says no one's hotter than Britney's prime.
I feel like when South End Zone Queen comes in and gives us a comment on hot women's hotness, like I just feel like women know better than men. You know, because men and women may look at it a little different, I think.
Golly, I could go both ways. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go, since it's a prime on prime and it's this level of a man's game, I'm going to assume we're talking total package. Everything's included. Personality's included. The look is every little thing is included. I'll buy. Like that. I mean, it's razor thin. But I'm thinking that in her prime, at that moment, at that car Catch, I'm going to say she's got just like a drop or 2 more of like sultry sexiness than Britney would have in her prime moment.
It's so close.
It's really close. I'm going to go buy there. By the way, just a quick honorable mention to the smoking hot blonde Australian accented physicist in Transformers 1. Oh, I don't even know her name, but the one that's hanging out with Anthony Anderson the whole movie. Good grief, is she attractive? Well played, Catch. Well played. All right, there it is. That is the buy or sell that will close the door. Unless, Catch, you have another chapter of CDC and Kirk Bowles we need to go over.
No, I'm good.
No, we'll wait for that. I'm sure that's coming out of Destin at some point. All right, that'll wrap it up. Thank you all for liking, subscribing, and getting your notifications. Thank you for supporting us here at Orange Bloods Live. We will be back tomorrow for a Friday show at noon. We are house divided. It is Orange Bloods Live. Remember, the QR code is down there. Hang on. Let me make sure we catch. Can you move that for me? Can you move the buy or sell so they can see the QR code? Make sure we got that at the end. There we go. Scan that QR code. Get it taken care of. Get signed up for orangebloods.com tonight. There's a war room. If Anwar was putting out the Kirk Bowles CDC back and forth on a Wednesday, what do you think he's got in the war room? In fact, a slight pull the curtain back. I get to see every week the chat about the war room as it's being prepped and cooked and everything. And Anwar this week threw in I got plenty.
Yeah.
So he's in Destin. He's got plenty.
I'm not even going to work the rest of the day. He said he's got it.
If that doesn't make you want to go to the war room, we can't do it any better than that. So check out the QR code there. Thank you all for jumping in. It is Orange Bloods Live. We'll talk.